Via telephone, Senator Jason Barrett. JB, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Great to have you with us, sir. How's things in Charleston?
Busy.
Counting down the days.
We have caucus. The Republicans in the Senate have caucus every morning at 8 o'clock. So I just finished in time to run upstairs to call you. So.
Well, I appreciate that, and the fact that you're in good aerobic shape that you can pull that sprint off and still come in without having to breathe.
It's only a flight of stairs. I can still manage a flight of stairs.
How the kids? How's the family?
Everybody's doing well. So it's going well. It's just busy. That's all.
All right. Well, let's talk to the Senate Finance Chair here about a few different things, and congratulate you on your food dye bill getting through and getting a governor's signature. What was the key to overcoming some of the objections to that bill, Jason?
Well, I think the real key was fast tracking it a little bit, and I've been here for 11 years, so I've picked up a few tricks along the way, and I think it was really just trying to getting an identical bill moving in both the House and the Senate, so that when the House bill came over to the Senate, we had already moved an identical Senate bill, and so that we could just take up the House bill and pass it without sending that House bill through the committee process in the Senate. So because we knew that the folks from Big Food and Big Drink were going to put up a big opposition to the bill, so we were just trying to get ahead of them before they could start the scare tactics and all those things. So, and
there's a delayed start to the effective date of this bill, correct?
Yeah, the actual education, the banning of the synthetic dyes in the school system is effective August 1 of this year. However, the statewide ban will be January 1 of 2028. I fully expect by that time that there will be several other states that have followed suit, and at that point, it'll put a lot of pressure on the FDA. Certainly, it appears that President Trump and certainly Secretary Kennedy, are supportive of eliminating these food dyes as well. So I would anticipate this to be federally banned by that date anyway, and that's really the goal. And I think that what happens is when states like West Virginia and other states that are moving forward with similar bans, the big food and the large manufacturers are going to say, okay, this is the way it's going to be, but we don't want 50 sets of rules. We want one set of rules. And I think at that point they will get on board with going to the FDA and say, okay, let's do it, but let's create one policy, not 50 policies.
Is there a chance that one set of unapproved dyes is replaced by one set of dyes that aren't yet unapproved?
That's a good question. I'm not sure about the science of all of that, because we did specify certain dyes and a couple other harmful additives. But again, these are the same ones that are banned in other countries, and they're able to use natural products for coloring. So that's what we anticipate that they'll do. And again, I think that's what the FDA is going to require as well.
Some of these also applied to pharmaceuticals, drugs and such, not just food. Was there any pushback with that?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that the bill really applies to pharmaceuticals.
I was told some of the preservatives were used in pharmaceuticals. That maybe that's.
But I don't know that it's banned for the use in pharmaceuticals. I think it may just be banned in the use of food.
I see.
Thank
you for the
I think that's taking on the healthcare industry at the same time you're taking on large food manufacturers is not really a battle to do. So
I agree.
So it's one step at a time.
Any idea what percentage of the foods that we eat have these dyes in them?
Well, the large food manufacturers tried to say 60% of the food was going to be taken off the shelves, and there's no basis for that whatsoever. I think I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you, but I think if I had to put a number on it, I would say the 10 to 15%. It's largely in junk food and prepackaged breakfast items.
Jason, kind of a variant to the question Rob asked, one of the arguments that was used, the lobbyists against this bill, was it's going to increase the price of the food. Do you have any idea at all what the price increase might be?
I don't think there's a price increase at all.
Okay.
I think if you go buy a Kellogg's brand, I don't think it, I know this. If you go buy a Kellogg's brand of Pop-Tarts, it's over $3. And if you go buy all these version of a Pop-Tart, which does not have food dyes in it, it's $2 less. So this idea that it's cheaper to use food dyes, I think that there's plenty of examples where that's not the case.
Maria.
So, Jason, switching gears a little bit, can you talk about were you surprised at the House's the House Committee's vote on the vaccine bill? Did that surprise you at all?
The full House's vote?
Mm-hmm.
I can't say it surprised me. I think they. I don't think they managed the calendar very well. And I say that because they passed the amendment to allow the religious exemption on the amendment stage on second reading on Friday, and then third reading for final passage was Monday. So you can use your imagination as to what happened over the weekend.
Okay.
And I think I don't think that's very good calendar management. In their defense, they did attempt to suspend the constitutional rule that a bill have to be read 3 times, and on that Friday, they attempted to have it read a third time that day in final passage. They just couldn't get the votes. That requires 4/5 vote. They were a handful of votes shy of doing that. I think what a better idea would have been for them would have moved to third reading with the right to amend, which they do typically a lot, and they certainly did that when I was there. And I always advocated to do that because in the House you have 100 members, and if you have a controversial bill that has amendments, on the amendment stage you're going to get 3 or 4 hours of debate on that. And then when you go the next day for final passage, guess what? You get 3 or 4 hours of debate again. But if you can do all those things on one day, then you just have one day of 3 or 4 hours of debate. And that's been their practice for several years, and I'm not sure why they kind of broke that practice on this bill. But I think that's real. That weekend for special interest and whoever to make all these phone calls to members and scare them, threaten them, to try to tell them what polling data says and whatever else, really to try to change their minds on that, because the amendment with religious exemptions received 52 votes, I think. And then some of the members that voted to allow a religious exemption then voted against final passage of the bill. So they clearly changed their minds, certainly from some outside influence. But when you give outside influencers a weekend to do it, that's what's going to happen.
Senator Jason Barrett, Senate Finance Chairman, our guest here on the program. I understand we may be making some progress on some form or fashion of locality pay, whatever its name might be.
That's the bill that we've talked about a couple times, that had the original price tag of the $190 million range. I've worked on a committee substitute here in finance, and we got it down to $126 million, which is just under the cost of a typical 5% pay raise for state employees. That's the number that Senator Tarr, who was the sponsor of the bill, that's what his original intent was. And I agree, that's probably the dollar amount that it ought to be. So we've taken out the regional formula to calculate the salary enhancement, and now we're just basing it on the mean, the formula for the mean home value in West Virginia compared to each individual county's median home price.
Also, Jason,
so it is a substantial increase for salaries for teachers in the Eastern Panhandle.
And what is its status?
It will be on the agenda in the Finance Committee today at 3 p.m.
Any idea what the mood of the room is on it?
I think it's pretty good. I think it'll pass. There may be some questions. There may be a no vote or two in the committee. I think it certainly passes the full Senate. There'll probably be a handful of no votes maybe, but I think that we'll get this bill out of the Senate and over to the House to see if they can get something accomplished on locality. It'd be a huge deal if they did.
Yeah, I was going to say the House appears to be the area that'd be most difficult to get it passed.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, Jason. Also, the Senate is addressing a bill that would allow the legislators to review and approve State Board of Education rules and policies. I think that's Senate Bill
705.
705. Yeah. How's that moving?
It's on final passage today in the Senate. I expect it to pass. I expect probably just under 10 no votes. I'm not the whip, I'm the finance chairman, but I know how to count, and I think it's probably just under 10 no votes maybe. But it's very similar to what Amendment 4 would have done. And so, I mean, I think you're going to say that, you're going to hear people say that this is a constitutional issue, or that this bill is going to be unconstitutional. Well, I think a lot of what we're aimed at doing here, or attempting to do with this bill, is to somebody will challenge it if it passes and becomes law. I think somebody challenges it, and it requires the court to look at it again. And I think there's a vast majority of us that think that the court, through a late '80s decision, it was being a bit activist and really solidified that the Department of Education is a fourth branch of government, when it really should have oversight from the legislature and folks that are elected and answer to people, not bureaucrats at the Department of Education or gubernatorial appointed state school board members. So I think that this is probably going to spark a court case, and I think it's the court makeup is very different than it was in '88 and '89. So I think that we'll look to see what this court decides if this bill makes it across the finish line.
So one of the no votes is anticipated to be Senator Grady, and her argument is just that. Even though she likes the idea that it should be reviewed by the legislators, the fact she thinks it's a constitutional issue more so than a statute issue. So she said she's going to vote against it.
Yeah, and I appreciate her opinion on that. And everything is constitutional until some court decides it's not. And I think what we're trying to do here is anticipating sparking a lawsuit on this bill so that the court will revisit this issue.
Well, it's an interesting scenario, the relationship between elected officials and education in this state. We've done so many interviews with those who are in charge of education, be they elected or not. And as our friend John Gilstrap has pointed out, Bill and Maria, it's like nobody has the ultimate say-so or responsibility as to why the education system in West Virginia is lacking. And this would at least take one excuse or one hand-washing or wringing out of the equation. If the legislature does have oversight of the State Board of Education, the legislature can no longer say, listen, they're their own entity.
It's not our fault.
It's not our problem.
Yeah.
Well, it's not our fault.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, at the same time, it's the legislature's not going to have complete ownership. I mean, there are hundreds of employees, that are in the Department of Education, and they deal with this on a day-to-day basis. But when the legislature passes laws, every state agency we typically give rulemaking authority to, and we allow them to make rules based around the laws we pass. And every other state agency has to come back to the legislature to get approval for those rules, to make sure those rules are consistent with the intent of the legislation that we passed. Well, the Department of Education doesn't do that, and that's really what this bill is aimed at doing, is that we pass laws all the time centered around education. Then the department creates a rule, the Department of Education creates a rule which may not be consistent with what the legislature intended, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's really what is at the crux of the problem.
Right, and I did not mean to imply the buck would then stop with you folks, but at least you'd have oversight now.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, SB 874 in regards to home confinement. Jason, talk to me about this bill.
That is a bill that I have, that Tim Saya at the Berkeley County Day Report Center has asked me to work on. Currently, home confinement officers in Berkeley County are in PERS, the Public Employees Retirement System. What they want to do is go into the EMS retirement system because the benefit is greater. It's a very similar bill to the one that I passed a couple of years ago around the paid firefighters for Berkeley County. So the paid firefighters were in the same situation that they were in the PERS, again, Public Employees Retirement System, and they wanted to go into the EMS system, which is far more suited for them, and I think that they made the case that the home confinement officers really should be in the EMS retirement as well. So that's what that bill does. Passed out of pensions early this week. It's on the Finance Committee agenda today.
The SJR 14 Homestead Exemption Increase Amendment, we talked to you about that last week. Has that gotten any traction?
No, not yet, but it's not subject to crossover day. I do intend to run the kind of companion legislation with it that would implement the increase to the homestead exemption provided the constitutional amendment passes.
Now, Jason, I'm sorry, you just said something that piques my interest. You said it's not subject to crossover day. Are there certain restrictions that something does not apply to crossover day?
The budget, supplemental appropriations, and constitutional amendments.
And I was going to ask the dumb question, just in case anyone who's listening or watching doesn't understand what crossover day is and what that entails. Jason, could you give us a 10-second explanation of that, please?
It's a day in which bills have to be out of their house of origin.
Okay. And what is that day? Date-wise?
A week from today.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, really come up against it here, too. Mm-hmm. All right, so I have a question on SB 577, which is in finance, which you, of course, are the chairman of.
Geez.
Clarifying prohibited practices by manufacturer, factory branch, distributor, or distributor branch when providing new motor vehicle to dealer. Is this the one that we talked about a couple of weeks ago?
Yes, that everybody on the Facebook page tore me apart for. Said that I wasn't focused on other things, but clearly, as in this interview and the past ones on Wednesday, clearly I am. But we're not going to run that bill, I don't think, in finance. I was really trying to send a message on behalf of consumers who feel like they're getting gouged by automobile manufacturers who pay for a particular feature on a car, and then they get stuck with continued subscription fees for that, especially ones centered around safety of a vehicle. So it was really to bring attention to it. There's a lot of states that have looked into this and have legislators and consumer advocacy groups have been pushing for. So it was a way to kind of send a message to manufacturers from West Virginia that so many other states are just kind of trying to send the same message.
Gotcha. Final couple of minutes here. Is there anything else you're working on legislatively or other bills that you are aware of that have a very good chance of getting through this year?
Well, I've been so the process this week has been an incredibly busy week for me because I've been getting a lot of second reference bills, meaning bills go to the first committee, more of the subject and the subject matter of the committee and the bill, and then it may or may not have a fiscal note or a financial impact to the state. So then that bill comes to me, and so. The frustrating part, which becomes for me, is that when the bill comes out of the committee of where the actual policy of that particular, maybe it's a health bill, for example, and maybe the bill comes to me from the health committee where there were some different groups or associations that are opposed to certain aspects of the bill. Well, they don't always go to the first committee and try to work those things out, even though that's what they should do. So this week they've been coming into my office, as I'm preparing those bills, trying to understand the fiscal impact of those bills, seeing if there are tweaks that can be done to help, for the financial aspect of that bill. And I'm getting bombarded with people that want to talk to me about the policy of that bill, and more so than the financial impact of that bill. And so that's what I'm dealing with this week is a lot of bills that have coming to me as their second reference, and I have to get those out by next Wednesday. And then I have a whole list of bills that were sent to this committee, just to this committee, that we're trying to get out as well. And when you have 28 or 30 days of budget hearings, it really limits the time to be able to get some of these bills passed. So this has been a very busy week for me and the staff here in the Finance Committee.
Jason, does every bill that appears before you in the Finance Committee require a fiscal note?
No. Sometimes bills will just set up a fund. Doesn't put any money in the fund, just creates a fund for future appropriation. And bills like that will come to finance. So, and that doesn't have any fiscal note, doesn't cost anything to set a fund up. And there are several other bills that don't necessarily cost money or have a fiscal note, but they are centered around some type of financial policy.
Very good. Any final questions for Senator Barrett?
I'm good.
All right.
Bill?
No, thank you, Jason. It was always very informative.
Jason, we'll let you go back to running the steps, man. Good job.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
Have a good day. That is Senator Jason Barrett, Finance Chairman, obviously, and appreciate his commitment to every Wednesday at this time, giving us a 25-minute rundown on what the latest is with legislation moving up and down the aisles there. As he said, a crossover day is a week from today, and after that, then you can only consider what's been submitted already.